Hey, what's up, everybody? It's J-Rock right here. Today we're gonna be taking a look at X-Men Mutant Genesis. This covers 1991 X-Men series, issues 1 through 7. This material will be can also be found in the Jim Lee X-Men Omnibus Volume 2. That collects issues 1 through 11, I believe. Okay, this was an interesting time in comics at the time. You had Chris Claremont on writing, then the second half of the book is John Byrne, because this is the first time the X-Men title was written by someone else, or someone else writing all the characters. So you immediately notice their voice kind of changed because you're used to Chris Claremont writing them for so long. I was in elementary school, and this book was so big time. The hype was real. There was lines in the comic book stores on Wednesdays to pick up their copy. So this was very mainstream. It even got a cartoon started. So Jim Lee was taking care of the plots. He was doing the artwork, but he was also doing the plot of where the story is going and so forth. The writers were basically just writing the dialogue, giving the characters things to say. That's kind of the Marvel way. So Jim Lee was like, you know what, let's bring back Magneto. Chris Claremont was against that idea. He had not killed off Magneto, but he had kind of made him a good guy already. So he no longer wanted him to be a villain. And Jim Lee was like, we gotta bring him back. And to me, this was genius. This was a great idea. We had to bring Magneto back because he had been away so long from the X-Men titles. He had been gone for about it was over a decade that he was no longer a villain. So he was being reintroduced to a whole new era of kids that are now reading comics. They knew of Magneto, but you haven't read him in the current storylines, right? So when Jim Lee decided to bring back Magneto, Chris Claremont and Jim Lee were kind of they had creative differences. They were not on the same page as to where they're taking the stories to. This was one of the big things that he didn't want Magneto coming back. But for me as a kid and for the kids of my generation, when we were reading this story, let me tell you where the story starts. It starts off where there's this humans flying off in space. There's this island spacecraft called Asteroid M. Magneto's in Asteroid M. He wants to be by himself, away from humanity. When these humans get too close, they're violating his airspace or whatever. He destroys the spaceships, and it's the first picture we see of him. Jim Lee draws a badass picture here. Magneto looks really imposing and threatening, and you're just like, holy shit, it's Magneto. We're finally seeing him in the current storylines. So this was a big moment for newer readers that had been reading the last few years only. And also you had Claremont on writing, and he just gives Magneto such a strong voice. When you brought Magneto back, it had to be Chris Claremont writing. He had to be the one to reintroduce him. It would have just felt completely off if it was somebody else. Another thing was, since now it's two X-Men titles, because this is issue 1, kind of like a reboot, but we still have the original Uncanny X-Men title still going. So this new X-Men title that's starting from issue 1 to 7 right here, these were all the original X-Men characters. At this time, they had their own series called X Factor. So now they're being brought back into the X-Men title. We'll talk about that when we do reviews on the X Factor books. So now that we have all these X-Men, we have to have two X-Men titles. We have two X-Men books now. X-Men and Uncanny X-Men. And they touch on this in this story here. They talk about it. They're telling you, oh well, there's a lot of us now, so we're gonna form two teams: X-Men Gold and X-Men Blue, which I thought was a perfectly fine idea. So she's leading Team Gold, I believe, and Cyclops is leading Team Blue, which I thought that was interesting to kind of see how each leader runs a separate team. And now here you see them kind of practicing Team Blue versus Team Gold, so they can learn to work together and how they're gonna work with their new teammates and so forth. X-Men are training. We get back to Magneto. Now another spaceship is flying up his area around Asteroid M. He also destroys this ship. But this time, this ship, they're mutants. These are not humans. The first ones were Russians. These are mutants. And they tell Magneto, oh, we're mutants and we're rebellions and, we look up to you. You're our hero. So he likes what he's hearing. He brings them into Asteroid M. When he brings them in, before he gets to speaking to them, they bump into the humans. Humans being in the green spaceship suits, mutants in the gold ones. Humans and mutants, they start arguing. One of the humans kills a mutant, shoots him down. One of the mutants kills a human, so there's losses on both sides. And then Magneto intervenes, breaks everything up, and asks the Russians, "What are you guys doing here? Why are you invading my space?" And he kind of has a vague idea of why the mutants are there. So he starts chit-chatting with these mutants, and he likes what he's hearing. He agrees to be their leader, and they form this team called the Acolytes. When Chris Claremont is writing, this can be so dialogue heavy. Like, I mean, word bubbles upon word bubbles upon word bubbles. More of the page has word bubbles than it does have actual drawings of Jim Lee. So it's crazy. It can be a little bit of a hassle sometimes. Luckily, what saves it is that the dialogue is good, the writing's good, but it can be a little bit of a drag. You see the immediate difference once. Second story is John Byrne writing. He can still be a little bit wordy, but nowhere near as much as Chris Claremont. Also, in his dialogue, he throws a little more humor, like the characters are cracking jokes and so forth, so it lightens the load some. It was a nice reintroduction to Magneto, and then we had a little excuse to have the two new X-Men teams fight each other, so you could see like, oh, which one's cooler, which one we like more, and so forth. So that's all the story that really went down here. The second half of this book is the other story. This is the one I really enjoyed because we dove deeper into Wolverine's background. Wolverine's always been this mysterious mutant that we don't know a lot about. We know he used to work for like the CIA for Canada or something, and then he joined the X-Men, and even he doesn't remember his own past. So here you could do a lot with, and Jim Lee here was like, hey, let's delve a little bit into this secret. They say he used to have this secret spy group of 3 people. It was him, Sabretooth, and this guy called Maverick. So I believe we're introduced to Maverick, a new character at this point, for the first time, and he's the glue that holds the whole story together. He's the glue to Wolverine's past, and he starts telling him, "You don't remember me, huh? We used to be old buddies." And then we realize how his rivalry with Sabretooth at this point hadn't been explained too much, and it shows how their past, they used to be buddies that worked together, and Sabretooth was always a little too out of control. He was hard to control, and basically because of him, the team broke up. Now that Maverick's back in town and he's kind of refreshing a little bit of Wolverine's memory, they start talking about their final mission, which is why Maverick's here. Their final mission was to stop this super soldier that Russia was trying to build. Oh, those Russians. Remember this? This is back in 1991, guys. Remember back in the 80s when Russia was kind of a terrorist threat? Man, that seems like so long ago that USSR don't even exist anymore. But, anyways, they were creating this mutant named Omega Red. So he's been like in a deep sleep, kind of frozen for like 30 years. And now this is the Russians version of Captain America basically, and the Canada has Wolverine and so forth. So now the Hand, which is one of Wolverine's main villains, the leader of the Hand decides he wants to wake this Weapon X called Omega Red, wants to wake him up because he needs him for something. So the Hand have this Dr. Cornelius. Dr. Cornelius, you might be familiar with him if you've ever read the storyline Weapon X. So they waken Omega Red and we get our first glimpse of him. He looks badass. He looks dope. And they poison Wolverine with something, so he goes to fight Omega Red, and he's not at 100%. The X-Men are notified that, hey, Wolverine's fighting with this Omega Red. We gotta go help him. They don't know who this character is at the time, but they're gonna go help, right? So of course, this being Jim Lee and this being the 90s, we have to show Psylocke in a bikini, just underwear and bra, right? Which is not too different from what her normal costume is anyway. On, they're like, throw on your uniform. We gotta go into battle. I thought that was funny when they show right here. This page is iconic. Everyone remembers it. Okay, so let's get back to the story. Let's get back to the story here. They go to find Wolverine. He's trapped, much like in the original Weapon X. They're trying to experiment on him. I think they're trying to find out how this Dr. Cornelius did this whole animanium because they want to put this animanium into Omega Red. That's the story there. That's the reasoning behind all this stuff that's going down. The action scenes here between the X-Men fighting other X-Men, and then the scenes with Omega Red and Wolverine fighting each other, man, they're super dynamic, which Jim Lee's always been known for that. He makes great covers, makes very attention-grabbing panels and two-page spreads, and this will be no different. If anything, at this point in time, I think this is Jim Lee at his best. He's at his peak right here. You also got introduced to some new characters. You got introduced to Maverick. You got introduced to Omega Red, to the Acolytes, and you also got reintroduced to Magneto. So this was a home run. This book right here, this story arc in between issues 1 and 7 was out of the ballpark for me. Art wise, it was a 10 out of 10. Writing wise, story wise, between John Byrne and Chris Claremont, who I really like both, was also a 10 out of 10. Is this a must read? I think, yeah, this is a must read. If you like X-Men, you definitely gotta check this out. And this is actually a great place where you can start. Alright, guys, so if you like comics or comic related content, you might think about hitting that subscribe button. That way, I'll keep you updated on my future content. Or if you want to just keep following me along on my X-Men reading journey, because I do plan to read from here and reviewing each trade up to issue, I believe, 530, where the series ends. So, that would be greatly appreciated if you want to follow me along on that journey. And other than that, guys, it's been great having you guys here, and I'll check you guys out next time.